Message from outer space to the viewers of this video. Please enjoy our coverage of the 2022 Exeter UFO Festival. The views expressed in this program are those of the speakers. They do not reflect the views of Exeter TV, the Town of Exeter, or the Select Board. To learn more about the festival, visit exeterufofestival.org. Start video countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off.
Okay, our next speaker is Bob Terrio. Attention, thank you. Bob grew up in suburban Boston. His curiosities in life began early and included many interests, including dinosaurs, space travel, nature, ghosts, UFOs, ESP, God, life after death, and many of life's other mysteries. He grew up enjoying art, photography, reading, model making, music, mostly classical, and movie soundtracks, movies, collecting 8mm monster movies and cartoons, absolutely, making movies, and an assortment of outdoor activities. Bob, showing early talent as an artist, his love of movies and filmmaking won out as the major pursuit in the Rochester, taking him to the Rochester Institute of Technology. During his senior year at RIT, Bob produced a 30-minute, 16mm documentary about psychic phenomena entitled Psyche. Part of the documentary covered the life and work of the famous American psychic Edgar Cayce. Cayce's son, Hugh Lynn Cayce, was so impressed that he hired Bob in 1975 to produce a full documentary about the life and work of his father, which ran daily at the Edgar Cayce Foundation, also known as ARE, in Virginia Beach for 19 years. While most of Bob's work was for corporate and industrial clients, he occasionally produced work for a number of documentaries about some of his side interests, ghosts, UFOs, psychic phenomena. Some of the highlights of his works are documentaries about Jane Roberts and the Seth Material, Travis Walton's UFO abduction experience, Betty and Barney Hill's alien abduction experience, and recording over 100 lectures for MUFON. Bob has had the good fortune to meet and work with some of the top researchers in the field, including Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan, Jennifer Stein, Stanton Friedman, Kathleen Martin, Travis Walton, Robert Butts, who is husband of Jane Roberts, and myself, and a number of people who knew and worked with Edgar Cayce, among others. Bob was a correspondent and videographer for Jennifer Stein's documentary Travis, The True Story of Travis Walton, and associate producer and videographer of the documentary The Extraordinary Life and Suspicious Death of James Forrestal, to which I am in his debt, among other collaborative projects. His subject today is fascinating to me, and I think will be to you as well: ancient aliens in Mexico. Bob Terrio, welcome back to this stage. Thank you,
Thank you all for being here. I'm going to try to make this very worth your while for coming out and sitting on this very hot day. You're going to see some things that very few people have seen, and I'll start off by saying there should be a question mark here, because we're not here to prove that there were aliens in ancient Mexico. But you'll see by what we have found, there very well may have been. And before I really get into the meat of it, I'm going to ask my friend and co-producer Jennifer Stein to talk about how we first found out about these, because she was the one who found out about these artifacts, did some research, and then got me involved in trying to produce a documentary about this. So I'm going to let Jennifer talk about how she found out about it.
Do we have any other slides we want to advance, and do you know how to do that? And I'll tell you right here, there's a button between these two and that one, and that's the pointer. So we can point to things on the stage. You're going to want to know about that. So I got asked to speak at a conference in this one over here, opposite. That's backwards. I got asked to speak at a conference conference, and I met a man there who had these artifacts. First, I went to Open Minds, and this guy showed up at Open Minds one day, which is one of the largest UFO conferences that happens, and he had all these artifacts out, and I was stunned at them as I started to look at them, because they had pictures of alien faces, but they were things like pipes and, all different kinds of maybe things you'd wear around your neck, like necklaces, medallions, things like that, and they had writing on them, and some of them they just had, they're clearly Mexican. You saw motifs that were like Aztec and Mayan, but then you also saw these exchanges that were going on with beings that had babies with big eyes, and they were reaching these babies up to the sky to like UFO craft that were above them. And most of us were like, really? Are these real? And the general opinion had been that they were not. They were just all fake. But I was curious about them because it was a big industry. And so I met this gentleman, and I'm blanking on his name. I think his first name is Mark. I can't remember his last name at the time. And I just started to photograph him. Then years later, at another conference, I met another gentleman named Victor Camacho.
Victor's picture.
And this is Victor and his wife Gladys. And he is Mexican, originally from Mexico, speaks Spanish, also came across some of these artifacts and decided to go and investigate them himself because he could go to Mexico and speak the language. And I learned from him that there were collections of artifacts that had been in families for 50, 60, 70 years. And these collections were found on their own property because they were farmers. And then they made it into small museums that opened. And they created such a controversy that some of these museums then were immediately closed because the Catholic Church did not want this information out because it's a very Catholic and religious country in Mexico. And then promptly a number of these artifacts went missing. They were stolen from basements and boxes and things like that where they were packed up. So it becomes a very complicated story. And I started to become very curious about it. I told Bob about it, and Victor happened to live in Ogden, Utah, and I happened to own a ski condo in Park City. And Bob and I are skiers, so I said, Bob, let's go skiing and let's interview Victor. So Victor drove down with his wife. We had a 3-bedroom condo. They stayed upstairs, and Bob had his own room. I had my own room. And we spent 3 days with Victor and Gladys, and we photographed and spoke in depth about his research. And what you're about to hear is the story that we learned from Victor, which is really a very different story. Now, we'd like to work on a film project about this. This was in March of 2019, and you know what happened in March of 2019? The world shut down. So we never really got to explore this project further, but we are hoping to, and it's going to be a really fascinating presentation. So I'm on hand if Bob needs me, but I don't think he does.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
So here's Jennifer with Victor and Gladys. He owns about, at the time, 30 of these objects that he had purchased and had done research on. And then, like she said, we spent a couple of days photographing and videotaping his items. And there's me shooting some of his stuff. And then we, like I said, the project, the intent to do a full-length documentary got messed up with COVID. But we had these pictures and we had a lot of information. And I do work for a company in England that does streaming videos on all kinds of UFO and paranormal topics. So I decided to create a 12-minute video, write a script, and put that together. So what we're about to see, which really kind of explains this whole story very well, is a video I produced that tells the story. It's about 12 minutes long. And then following the video, we're going to take a look at some of these items up close and get a chance to really look at them. So if they'll run the video.
Mexico, home to some of Earth's most advanced, mysterious, and violent ancient civilizations. Archaeologists and historians continue to uncover treasures buried for centuries in the jungles and the deserts of Mesoamerica. The Olmecs, one of the earliest to occupy the region, left behind giant stone heads, whose features resemble races from the African continent. The Mayans, whose pyramids and architecture rival the monuments of Egypt, the Middle East, India, and the Orient, developed a form of picture writing and ways of recording dates on stone. And the Aztecs, who, like the pre-Columbian civilizations that preceded them, practiced a religion that relied on natural forces. They too built tremendous temples, carved monumental structures and complex sculptures, masks and ornaments, as well as creating calendars and timekeeping systems. These are but a few examples of the sculpture, artwork and writings that survived the conquest and pillaging of these great cultures by the Spanish in the 1500s. Historians today agree that humans arrived in the Americas and did not evolve there. What they don't agree on is when and how they arrived. Some believe that the first inhabitants of Mexico were descendants of Siberian immigrants who crossed the Bering Straits land bridge to North America. Others say they might have sailed or canoed across the Pacific, and even might have been one of the lost tribes of Israel. There are even theories that they were the survivors of the lost continents of Atlantis or Lemuria. The noted American psychic Edgar Cayce reported this as a fact in numerous readings given in the early 20th century. Recently, some researchers like Eric von Daniken speculate that ancient astronauts from outer space arrived thousands of years ago to populate the Earth, or to breed and intermingle with the primitive human cultures they found there. They point to a number of mysterious artifacts that they claim supports their theories. Skeptics say that there are more rational explanations for them. But now, strange, controversial artifacts have appeared that paint a different picture of Mexico's ancient past. Controversial because the images on these artifacts suggest something that most historians and archaeologists refuse to believe. In 2012, Victor Camacho, a Mexican radio talk show host and paranormal researcher, was shown some very unusual artifacts by a friend. These stone carvings were allegedly found by farmers and common landowners in a number of remote sites in northern central Mexico, far from the sites of previously known Mesoamerican cultures. Victor and his wife Gladys began to research these artifacts and soon learned that they had been discovered for at least 50 years, but are generally shunned and ignored by the Mexican government, leading archaeologists and historians. Why, you may ask? One reason is that the landowners have kept their locations secret and have not allowed professional scientists and archaeologists to investigate them on site. Some have been profiting from the sale of these artifacts to private and public buyers. But perhaps the greatest reason why archaeologists, the academic community, and the Mexican government believe them to be fake are the images featured on these artifacts and what they seem to imply. Most people who have seen these images agree that they do not represent human beings, gods, or other things that are native to planet Earth. They seem to represent what UFO researchers recognize as extraterrestrial beings, half human, half alien hybrids, and UFO vehicles. These carvings, most etched into polished, hard rocks, show precise, highly developed techniques that suggest that they were created by a very advanced and technically sophisticated culture. Are these authentic ancient artifacts, or very clever hoaxes, as many experts claim? One way to find out is to have them carbon dated, but rocks can't be carbon dated. There are, however, a number of sculptures with other kinds of stones glued onto them. Researchers removed some of these stones and were able to carbon date the organic materials found in the glue. The results of one test performed at a German laboratory date that artifact as 3,800 years old. A second carbon dating of a different sculpture at the University of Arizona AMS laboratory produced a date of 7,521 BC. This is strong evidence that at least some of these artifacts are genuine prehistoric relics. So if we take the position that these are real ancient artifacts, what can we learn by studying the images on them? Let's start with the faces. They depict humanoids with rounded heads, large slanted almond-shaped eyes, small or no noses and small mouths. All of these features are common to what UFO researchers call grey aliens or the Greys. Some are depicted as floating or flying in the air. Another feature common among the beings is that they have 4 fingers. Many people who claim to have had contact with extraterrestrials report that they have 4 fingers also. Other figures appear to be more human, with clothing similar to figures seen in Mayan or Aztec artwork, but their heads are larger than normal humans, and they have those large slanted eyes, even small figures that may represent babies or small children. In many cases, the children are being held up as a possible offering or sacrifice. There are no indications of blood or killing in these renderings, a feature common in other Mesoamerican cultures and artwork. In addition to the offerings of alien children, some of the figures are holding or offering a round orb of some kind. Another interpretation is that the orbs are being given to the kneeling figure. Many figures have what appear to be wings. Was this part of some religious or ritualistic costume, or does it represent the fact that these entities could fly? Some may speculate that these beings are angels or gods, as depicted in other works by advanced cultures worldwide. There are also female figures depicted, with some indications that they are pregnant with extraterrestrial-looking embryos. Researchers in recent years who work with people claiming alien abduction experiences report that they have been impregnated by the ETs and that there is an active program to create human-alien hybrids. These artifacts may indicate that this phenomena has been occurring for many thousands of years. To support the theory that these figures are beings not of this earth, there are many images of flying objects that resemble photos and descriptions of UFOs or extraterrestrial spaceships that have been reported around the world over the past century. Some of these show what appears to be a beam of some kind coming from the bottom of the craft. In cases where they are shown above the figures offering a sacrifice, could this represent the children or hybrids being lifted to the UFOs? Or do they represent the UFOs delivering these alien babies or hybrids to the citizens of Earth? Quite a number of the artifacts show what may be the reason these beings have come to our planet. These round circles may represent the ET's home planet. Some are plain circles, but most are surrounded by dozens of small dots. Does this indicate that their planet was destroyed by asteroids? Another explanation is that these might represent a technically advanced civilization with a planet surrounded by manufactured satellites similar to Earth. In any case, several of these planet icons have several large cracks running through them. It's easy to interpret this as representing earthquakes or other planetary destruction. Some of these images show what appears to be a comet. but instead of hitting the planet, it is aiming away from the planet, which may actually represent their craft leaving their world to escape their catastrophic planetary destruction. Again, we can only speculate as to their meaning. The one aspect of these carvings that matches other Mesoamerican art is the depiction of animals that are common to these regions, wolves or dogs, snakes, panthers and crocodiles. Some even resemble dragon-like reptiles, which can be found on artwork from other ancient cultures around the world. A number of the human figures are seen lying down on top of these creatures. One can only guess at the significance of this. And lastly, many of these stone artifacts contain images that resemble hieroglyphics. They do not compare with any known ancient or modern languages. Some are repeated. Do they represent an ancient language long lost through the ages? They're just another of the many mysteries surrounding these fascinating artifacts. We agree with Victor and Gladys Camacho that these artifacts need to be studied by professional archaeologists and historians. He has personally seen over 2,000 of these artifacts that are in the hands of the people who claim to have discovered them on or near their properties. He and Gladys have traveled to some of the sites themselves, usually in very remote places. If not sold or donated to museums or universities, at least make them available for serious study by professionals who are open-minded enough to look past the implications of their controversial images. Victor and Gladys own more than 30 of these artifacts and are anxious to have experts study them. Scientists and academic professionals are known to have anti-UFO and extraterrestrial biases. They work very hard to protect their libraries of knowledge and resist any evidence that may conflict with their beliefs. Serious research may uncover acts of fraud, but it may also prove that these artifacts are real. And if so, we must all be prepared to open our minds to the incredible stories they have to tell us about our ancient past.
Thank you. So that's the basic story, and I can't add a whole lot to it. So the rest of what we're going to show are basically, let's take a look at these again. We'll slow down, take some time to look at them. Again, we're not in a position to say one way or another that these are real or not. We're not the experts. But I've held these in my hand. These are not carved from clay or bone. They're from solid rock. And another thing, too, is they've been described as polished rocks. Well, they're not just polished, but you can see that most of them have this coating of white that's very hard and almost like ceramic, but it can't be easily scraped off. So what you're seeing when they make the scrapings on these, or some places where it's worn, is the natural color of the gray rock underneath. These rocks are gray. They're not white, and they're not red. They've been coated with something. So we'll go through these, and
this is the same size. This is one object in the front.
right, this object is the front and back of the one object. They're intricately carved. Somebody used some pretty sophisticated tools to carve these. And again, if it was done in modern times, okay, we've got the technology, but somebody would still have to go to great lengths to create these. And if it were me, I'd have to charge a whole lot of money. And I don't know what they're charging for these, but...
I would point out also the difference between one side and the other. Like, you've got the chief, and the planet is different.
Right, you've got on one side, as you can see up the top, there's the planet with all the dots. What does that mean? And on the reverse side, you've got somebody holding the baby up to what looks like a UFO. What else could that be? A tent, a building, a turtle? I can't think of too many things that could possibly be. And again, there's the planet. What we think may be the planet with cracks in it. And some people were saying, oh, maybe that's a comet hitting the planet. No, whatever that is, comet's coming out of the planet.
The same guy looks like he's coming out of a UFO.
Right, and at the bottom on the right, he's like he's emerging genie style out of a UFO from the bottom.
Stone.
These are stone. These are not bone. They're not clay. These are hard rocks, heavy, hard rocks.
And it's about this big.
And yeah, they're all about this big. And as you see, there's some that are very small and some that are larger. And again, repeating motifs of alien faces, what we interpret as alien faces. People with wings holding up babies. You see the two holes at the top. We assume this was made to be either worn or a person wearing this or maybe hung somewhere. But obviously, and again, the UFO. And there's the fellow sitting on what looks like a dragon, holding another, what we think of as a baby. And the baby has big eyes, so it's easy to say, well, it looks like it could be a hybrid of some kind. And the person holding it has the big almond eyes. These are not common to Aztecs, Mayans, Olmecs, or any of these other cultures. And the other, this is the front and back of the one object. And again, on this left, you've got somebody holding a little child like a papoose-like. There's a wolf or dog. There's the UFO. There's a circle with the dots, we assume is the planet. And on the reverse side, there's the planet breaking up, cracks in it with something coming out. Is that indicating these people leaving their planet to come to Earth? It's all speculation. We don't know. And again, on the reverse side, he's kneeling, holding what looks like a hybrid baby, and he's holding up one of those globes, one of those orbs. What the heck does that mean? Again, assuming these were made thousands of years ago. There's the guy with the wings sitting on the dragon, holding up another baby. And on the reverse side, there's an alien head, another guy kneeling. It looks more alien-like. Here we start to see again some of the markings. We assume they're possibly some kind of writing. We've searched the internet, we've talked to linguists, and have not found anything to match these symbols. And again, up towards the right, there's the some guy floating in, holding something. And somebody kneeling, holding something weird looking. It doesn't really look like a baby or anything. But they're fascinating. You just have to look at it like, what does that mean? What does that mean? You turn it over and there's stuff on the back. What does that mean? And you can see where the white has rubbed away. That's the natural gray is the rock. Somebody went to the trouble of coating these with something very hard. And again, this is why we need researchers to look at these and go, okay, what are they coated with? Is this something that's common today, or is this unusual? There's a close-up of the same piece. What is this person holding? Person with a really elongated head, small mouth, almond eyes. What the heck is that? And this guy floating in, what's he holding? Some kind of... It's very strange. This is part of the same piece. Somebody kneeling. Some of these get very complicated in the stuff that's carved on them. Here's another piece. Something to note on some of these seems to show a person with their left arm or left hand resting on their cheek. It's like, they relaxing? Are they perplexed? What does that mean? And if you look at the bottom on the left here, there's somebody kneeling, which I don't know why in ancient times anybody would design something that looks like a helmet or a sports helmet or a space helmet. And a lot of work went into these, not just to carve the shape of it out of rock, but then to carve all these individual items on them. And again, that's the backside over here. Again, somebody lifting something up, a gift of some kind or who knows what. Whoops. Try it again. There we go. This is that same object close up. There's the kneeling guy with some kind of a strange helmet and boots that don't look like something they would wear hundreds or thousands of years ago. And then on the other side, there's another guy wearing some kind of a funky looking helmet, looking up at a UFO. I think we'll show you the bottom on the next one. No, that's the head. Again, a very strange bullet-headed, alien-like figure.
This one didn't have a hole in it.
Yeah, this one did not have a hole. But a lot of them had holes drilled in them. Very precise, very nicely drilled holes. We assume to have a string of some kind put through it to possibly wear them. Here's a different one. And this one looks, is that pregnant with a baby inside, or is that carrying a baby on the front? Another alien kneeling at the bottom, laying on a snake, or could be a snake. And this guy's got both his hands on his cheeks like...
And it's interesting that on the back, you have...
Come on up.
Okay, sorry.
The official here.
I was going to share that on the back, you have almost the model image on the front. So this is the front and back of the same object. And look at all the planets at the top here. Right. Is this our solar system? Is this the same planet? It's very hard to know what the story is that's being told.
There's a close-up. There's a UFO with a beam. There's a planet looks like it's being destroyed with dots around it. And something looks like Saturn with a bunch of dots around it. And then another planet with a big bulge.
And this one has a hole. So
you can see the hole up the top for that to be worn. You can see the size. That's somebody holding it.
Those are Gladys's fingernails there.
Yeah, I can see Gladys's fingernail there. This one's fairly small. And down at the right, you can see the hole that was drilled. Of course, now we have the technology to drill holes in rock pretty precisely. 3,000 years ago, did they? Oh, I don't think so. This is a necklace. It has multiple pieces. There's an alien-looking face right kind of in the middle there. This was a little different. You can see this one was carved, but it has more of the natural rock color, except for these inner pieces, which were attached somehow. And there's the white and a couple of red pieces that were added. And we'll look at some of the close-ups of this a little bit here. All pretty precisely carved, images put on them and somehow affixed to this rock pretty solidly.
These were very tricky to photograph. We had to light them very specifically, and even still with lighting, the reflection and the glare, it was very hard. We spent 3 days photographing these things.
And as you can see, all around the outside of this, a lot of that, what we call writing, symbology, something. Here's a guy who looks like his bottom half is a rattlesnake, and he's smoking a pipe, or he's talking into some device right there.
How they get the red there?
It was inlaid stone.
It was inlaid stone.
So this was just regular stone. This was some type of inlaid stone that was white on the surface, but when they carved it, it was this color. So it had
Or some kind of white something added to it. It's not the natural color of the rock. Another image. Is he smoking something or talking into a device? We don't know where a lot of these came from. They kind of appear. Victor's been trying to research some of these. He knows where some of these have come from. The problem is they've come from farms. They just kind of appear, supposedly. Victor said it's difficult because some of these are on properties belonging to the drug cartel. So if you try to go in there without some kind of contact, you're going to get killed. Which makes it extra hard to research this stuff.
Go ahead, you
Yes. He's asking if other artifacts were found with these to try to determine a timetable. Not really.
I can talk a little bit
Yeah.
to that, and we can continue to go through some of the slides, but I'll just share with you just a little bit. The problem with many of these artifacts is we really can't date them because you just can't date stone. But there wasn't, some of the artifacts are pipes that have been found. I think we have, we'll get to that eventually, but we'll share with you that there's some other researchers that are also studying these. And one of those researchers is Scott Wolden, and he had a program called Unearthing America. Some of you may have seen it. I think it was the History Channel, I think.
I think so.
Or maybe it was the Travel Channel.
5 seasons, I think.
He did about 4 or 5 seasons, and he did 1 or 2 episodes on these artifacts. Now, he also bought a lot of these objects from Mark and from, some of the other people that are digging them up. And he came across a pipe that actually came out of the Baja region of California. And it was, so it was not in Mexico, but it was near the Mexico-Baja, Southern California border. It was found in, I think, the 50s, and it was dug up by a road crew building a road. And in the pipe is, and it's carved, it's got alien faces on it, but it has residue, like tobacco residue in it. And that residue can be dated. And he had it dated, and he got similar dates that are several thousand years old. I don't remember if it's in the 3,000 or 5,000 year category. So we'd very much like to spend time with Scott and interview him and to go into more depth. We'll also share with you that to verify the University of Arizona's...
We'll get to that because we have...
Okay, good. Very good.
We'll talk about that when we get to that slide. So again, this is the back side of that the round piece. There's a fellow sitting on a dragon. You can see the dragon's head up the top breathing some kind of smoke or something. He is either talking into or smoking some kind of pipe or something with a face on it. Sometimes if you see a figure with something coming out with a little curl, that's indicating that they're speaking or of some kind.
And there's like a dragon headdress.
You can see the
Face, and there's a dragon above him.
yeah, some kind of dragon or dragon costume he's wearing.
Broken, and here's the tail. So that's
And there's a close-up over there of him with something he's smoking or breathing into, or
he's seated, I think, with his knees up. Can we see his knees?
on this one you can see.
So he's seated. There's his knee. He's seated. It's weird.
Yeah,
Drinking something maybe out of a glass?
Drinking or smoking?
maybe drinking, or
We don't know.
but there's a face on it. There's a human face.
This is the human face, right? On the, maybe it's a pipe.
Here's a very tiny one. Again, that's stone. We believe that's stone.
And it's got a hole drilled in it. Apparently there might have been several. I don't know if you can see the hole in the head. It was as big as a penny.
And this was discovered, I believe, was it on a property or in a cave? And they looked down and this was moving. An ant was carrying this. That says how they found this. They looked down and this little thing was moving and an ant was carrying it. That's how they got this piece.
We've seen things like this in Sumer where there were many, many, many of them and they were all strung, like hanging on a necklace or something.
Very tiny. What kind of technology would carve that?
We couldn't get it in focus.
Yeah. They did travel to one site. They were accompanied, they drove for many hours until they could drive no further. They got out and hiked for several hours, camped out overnight. The next day, traveled several more hours to get to this site, which was a cave. Inside the cave, they found over here a bunch of like gold flakes, tiny bits of gold. They just picked them up and gathered that much gold. And Gladys found, if you saw the video of her holding a small round brown object, she found that on the floor of the cave. But this is a cave where other artifacts had been taken already, so there wasn't really much to see there, but that's the extent that they've researched this and tried to figure out where these are. Yes?
Are there different artifacts like this in different parts of the world that are similar?
We're not aware of anything that looks like this anywhere else. That's why this is unique. Well, like I said, we've researched the writing and the markings. Sometimes we found things that were kind of close to it, but ancient Chinese or ancient lost languages.
The books I've been going through trying to line up some of the icons that look similar to other things. So we see things that look like Chinese, we see things that look like unicorn. But most major university professors, I know a few in the linguistics area in the University of Pennsylvania, they don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. They're like, get out of here.
Right, they don't want to touch it, for obvious reasons. Here's somebody holding a little alien-looking baby, part of a necklace. Another figure with its left hand on its cheek. What looks like maybe a little alien baby, possibly pregnant. Cone-shaped head. That's not normal in most places on Earth. A hole drilled through it, so this is made to be hung or part of a necklace. And again, on the backside, somebody holding up a round object towards what looks like a UFO. And the fact that these were found in 4 or 5 different remote locations, they weren't all found in one place. And we've heard, Victor found out that one set of objects was found on a farm. The original farmer years ago, like 60 to 70 years ago, had found a bunch of these in the process of tilling the land. Because of the imagery on it, he interpreted it as being demons or devils. Put them in a box and hid them away. And after he died, one of his sons found the box, found these items in it years later, and suddenly had a different interpretation of them. And that's how they came to light. But they were found many years ago in a farm, an old spot. There's another one, hole in the head. Thinking about something, sitting on something. There's a different one. And here you can see the eyes are some kind of a turquoise-colored stone that was cut and glued on somehow. Thinking about a UFO.
I have a quick question. Any of the farmers profited by this yet?
We don't know all of the details about that. Again, this needs further research to find out, okay.
One of the original collections, no, it was kept hidden, and then the son brought it and gave it to the town as part of a museum. And that opened as a museum behind the city hall. It was open for about a year, And then the Catholic Church closed it down, and the artifacts went back into the basement of the City Hall, kind of a building much like this. And then, like in the next year, like half the artifacts went missing.
Right, Victor went back.
They collected them back again.
Yeah, Victor went to the museum to take a look at these artifacts, and the boxes were missing. The artifacts were missing from the basement of the museum.
Now people are profiting from the sale of them, and you can go online if you Google it, and you'll see tons of these things that are available for sale. So we know some of them for sure are being faked and made.
Right.
So that's part of the phenomenon.
And in Mexico, it's illegal to sell Mayan or Aztec or what are considered genuine ancient artifacts. It's against the law. They're allowing these to be sold because the government and the archaeologists don't believe they're real. So that's why they're all for sale. Thankfully, I guess. There's another one, a planet being broken up. And they can see the holes drilled on this is kind of almost looks like it's curved.
Here and here, it's a loop.
Like a looping curve into the stone. A kneeling guy holding another little baby. The middle is the front of the object.
And a planet.
A planet, again with the cracks and all the little dots around it and something flying out of the planet. There's a close-up of the guy holding the baby. You never see the babies don't look bloodied or sacrificed, but they're holding them. And so that means something to somebody.
One quick thing. In that case, the planet, the thing is, it looks like it could be a spaceship, like you said a little bit.
Yeah.
Also like a
It looks like something, well, it's...
To me,
What's interesting is that whenever we see this planet being broken apart, it looks exactly the same.
Right.
The cracks.
They all look the same. 2 or 3 giant cracks coming through.
one more thing, some story I read was about how people came to Earth was that their planet was in another solar system. They left with some ships. One crashed into Jupiter, one crashed into the Sun, and one made it to Mars. And it took a long time to get built up to finally get here. And they ended up in the South. This was some story.
Yeah.
They ended up in the South Pole was the Antarctic.
Yes.
It was not at that time ice cap.
Yes.
Right.
That's the whole story, how they, and that would fit it a little bit. Exiting.
Maybe. Yeah.
Here's the bottom of that piece. Somebody alien laying on a wolf.
I just want to say, I think each one represents a story. And second of all, I think they wanted to leave the legacy behind and to share it with other people like us.
Yeah, I think each little carving is like a unique figurine.
Yeah, each one tells a story.
Individual story on their own figurine because they're different, but they're similar. It's how they relate to the story.
There you go. The hand on the tummy, an alien looking. A UFO, cracked planet.
He's got his
Hand up in their face, which usually might mean, oh my gosh, this was... And 2 feet. You notice the top of the head, 2 look like human feet.
Does that mean he was a wanderer?
What does that mean?
He left his planet? You know, what? We don't know.
Who knows? We can only speculate. It's just very strange.
It could also mean that these images were telepathically conveyed to people, and that's what they're holding their head for, like these images.
Well, possibly.
We're open to all possibilities.
Here's another one with
Another one with a curved hole drilled into it.
the head for a string.
And it looks like a little guy sitting
So this is the back.
inside of
This is the back.
this person.
That's the front.
And the front.
The back of the same figurine, just flown up for you to see it.
Yeah.
These are like composite shots.
These are all composites of the same image from different sides. There's the bottom.
And that's the
Again,
bottom.
somebody laying down holding something, and it's with a,
These were all carved on the bottom as well,
every side. Somebody went to a lot of trouble to make these things. Here's the pipe.
Yes.
This is the side.
So it's hard to see. There was a hole in the top of the pipe. I think this is the hole in the top of the pipe.
There's an oval cut, and then right there, that dark little spot was a tiny hole, which goes from there to the back.
So this is
So you smoke the back here.
back, and this is where the hole was in the top of it. But it was narrow.
Very narrow. You can see the fingers holding it here.
It looked like a face.
And then this has things glued on it. Eyes and faces and things and...
Really interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? And even now, if they were made recently, that would take a certain amount of technology, time, and effort to make it look old. These don't look like they were made yesterday. They look like they've been sitting around for quite a while. There's wear on them, wear and tear.
Are those also made out of stone?
Are these also?
Also made out of stone?
Outer
The pieces glued on are also stone, yeah.
This is an added stone, and that's an added stone to this stone
Yeah.
here. So these are attached pieces.
Yeah. There's a pregnant woman, we think.
This was about this high.
Yeah.
This was a fairly large artifact.
And some kind of a gold oval on the forehead and on the stomach. Like, what does that represent?
And we thought on one side it could be the mother and the father. It's hard to see.
Yeah, we'll show you the sides in a second.
Around.
You can kind of see, is that the dad
Is this the mom?
holding a ball, or the mom?
And this is the other leg.
That's the other leg on the other side. Very, very strange. There's the back. Somebody's sending us a message. What does it mean? What the heck does that mean?
So there were like 5 lines of writing on the back, and then like a
UFO on the butt.
and like the butt area, and that's what you see over there.
Could I say one quick, the one
Yeah.
before, the wall could have been the egg and the sperm could have been the other leg. So it's,
Possibly.
We're open to all possibilities.
Possibly, yes.
This is all speculation. Again, more symbology we don't understand, things we don't recognize. Right, none of these were found, a bunch of them in one spot, as far as we know. There were people looking around their properties, one here, one there. Not in big clusters. No, these were not, no.
Go ahead. They vary. They're sort of like some of the artifacts that were found around the United States. You know, like there were artifacts dug up in the United States as well that had runic writing and writing from Celtic writing and things like this. Usually farmers found them, and they were discovered, at least the ones in the United States, they were discovered over like 100 years, but they're still considered fake.
And you see the similarities, even though these were found sometimes hundreds of miles apart. So who would travel and plant them? You know, that doesn't make sense either.
one looks like the crop circle, one of the first crop circles.
Right? Crop circle. Exactly.
Yep, this guy right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the first.
I saw that right away. I said, well, what's that?
Right. And here's is that a UFO with some kind of lines coming out of it? Does that mean it's taking off? Or is it a sound device making sounds?
And this is very, very Mayan. You see, Mayan and Aztec sculptures like this, but of course it's got an alien.
Right.
And Scott also come back with the analysis of study that
Yes. Well,
He did one program on one artifact. He told me he has over 300 artifacts. This is why we want to get together with Scott and have him use his technology, because he's got some sophisticated technology to analyze rocks and things. And COVID kind of squashed that. But we are scheduled to go on a cruise next April, a UFO-themed cruise, and Scott's going to be on the cruise, so we're going to try to bring a camera and interview him.
and any of you could go on that too if you want.
Right.
Kind of like a UFO cruise.
A UFO cruise going from
California, it'll go down
San Diego down the west coast of Mexico.
in Mexico.
I'm planning to be there. Jennifer's going to be there. Was Rich Dolan, I think, was?
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
For all the people.
There's another one. And I'm looking at that box. It's a frame. Is that a primitive TV set of some kind? What are these things? Teeth and... Again, you look at this and like, why would somebody thousands of years ago make that imagery? And the guy sitting there kind of looking at it. And big gray alien face. And in the back, you've got a skeleton-looking face and holes drilled in it, so somebody thought this was cool enough to wear. Another piece that's like a dagger.
But these weren't knives you could cut with. These
Right,
were
ceremonial.
How small was that dagger?
ceremonial? This one was quite large.
That was about, it was about a foot long. And again, intricately carved. There's a sun symbol on there. A lot of stuff going on. There's a different dagger. Again, a guy with a weird oblong helmet with a mesh of some kind on the face.
Looks like a fencing mat.
We don't know of any primitive cultures that had masks with netting on them or some kind of mesh or netting. Here's the one that I used as the front piece. Again, that's the front and back, and the back having some very definite, they're in rows, so that definitely looks like some kind of communication of some kind. And we'll show you a little bit more about that because Jennifer did some experimentation with somebody who taught classes in remote viewing. And I think this is leading up to that. That's the front side. All right, you can talk about this, Jennifer.
Yep. Do we have a picture of how we showed it to him?
Yes.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
a number of the images you had of holding babies up and question of pregnancy, and of course, this is the contemporary theme as well with the ill abduction.
Yeah.
It's just speculation about pregnancy and ETs, humans and ETs.
The hybrid and pregnancy issue, we've talked about it to various speakers over the weekend, and it's, of course, covered in many documentaries and books. There's significant amount of testimony from people claiming abductions, claiming pregnancies, claiming hybridization programs. I mean, there's a lot of evidence for that. So that's why it's easy to look at some of this imagery and say, the fact that these young infants, babies, children have large eyes, large heads, it's easy to interpret that as meaning that they are also hybrids, that they're not normal children.
I will tell you, I know women myself who discover they're pregnant and they don't have a way they could have got pregnant. They get medical exams. They know they're pregnant. I mean, women in the audience will testify when you're pregnant, you know it. You know, your breast gets sore and you're hungry and, you know, there's weird things are going on with your body. And then all of a sudden, and you go and you find out you're pregnant and you're trying to figure out, well, how did this happen? And then, like 6-8 weeks later, the pregnancy disappears. So I can't, this has never happened to me, thank God. I don't really know what I would do. I would be rattling with my sanity, but I know women that this has happened to. So is it a real phenomenon? Who knows? You know, it's speculation. I suspect that it is, and maybe these are reflecting that, but it's not something I can, you know, verify myself, but there are women who can if they want to come forward.
So we're running low on time. This is Nancy DeTetris. She has been involved with research programs with remote viewing. And for those who aren't familiar with remote viewing, it was government programs back in the Reagan era in which groups of psychics were taught a technique where, under mild hypnosis, they were given targets, and in many cases it was just a latitude, longitude number, and they were trying to spy on Russia. So this remote viewing becomes a technique of mentally trying to project your consciousness somewhere and trying to pick up imagery or whatever. So Jennifer contacted Nancy, who teaches a class to students about remote viewing, and I'll show you. So she took the symbology from that rock and transferred it to a piece of paper. So all the students had was this. They didn't know where it came from, and we asked them to remote view these images and see what they could come up with. And it would take a probably an hour to really go through some of the testimony, but some of them were interesting. Some of them were related to ancient cultures. One related it to the Far East, more like the Orient, with some depicted like a jungle community, which of course that's what central Mexico is, greatly. So there were some images that we felt could very well represent what this was.
One of the questions we asked them is this language? You know, is this possibly language?
Or is it something else?
And if it is, do you have any sense of what it says? And a number of them came up with, yes, it's language. Some of them said it relates back to ancient Chinese culture. Some of them said it's about a group that took off in a ship and they traveled, they escaped, and they were on the ocean, or they were on their way, and then they arrived.
And this is all they had.
And this described that, and they described the bottom image in here as being like on a ship.
Yeah, that bottom, like somebody riding in a boat, or a ship, or a craft of some kind.
And that like to being on a ship and catching the wind. That, the top image was like being on a ship and setting.
Yeah, being on a ship.
More than one of the remote viewers got this same image. In fact, we did it twice.
We did, yeah, with 2 classes.
There were 2 classes, and in each class there were about 10 participants. And I would say in each of them, about 4 to 5 of the participants in each of the classes got similar concepts and ideas. And we thought that was really interesting because none of them knew, you know, they didn't talk about this, they didn't share their notes with each other, they didn't talk to each other. These classes were 6 months apart, and they were people all over the world.
And I think once they finished the first session, we showed them the object and then asked them for further information about that.
And they gave us some interesting stuff.
Interesting stuff. Some of it was a little off the wall. We didn't feel it was accurate, but who knows for sure. All right, Jennifer can talk about this.
You want me to talk about it?
Yeah, you talked.
This guy was ready to kill me.
Jennifer went to the University of Arizona.
Yeah, I'm an alum of the University of Arizona. I have a Bachelor of Science degree, actually, in textiles from the University of Arizona. And I called up this lab because apparently they did this research that
Somebody else sent them.
a Russian man sent them a little bag of dust in a little clear plastic baggie.
Didn't say what it was.
And he didn't tell them what it was, but he sent them $500 and asked them to do radiocarbon dating on this dust. So they did it, and they got back the information, which was about 7,000, the radiocarbon dating. It's 7,513 BC to, you know, give or take 50, 60 years. They can sort of really rapidly point with carbon-14 dating, because it's the breakdown of organic materials. It's the breakdown of carbon that they can use to date by, so it's really quite accurate. But the problem is the University of Arizona did not get the artifact themselves intact. As far as they're concerned, there's no what they call prominence, or there's no authenticity to the artifact.
They had no control over it.
They had no control about lifting, say, the eyeball out of the artifact and scraping the glue off the back of the eye. And he felt that this was blasphemy, that the University of Arizona's carbon dating department was being credited as having dated an artifact that they never saw. And he was ready to, he thought I had put all the videos up on the internet that were there because I was a filmmaker. And he was like screaming at me in the phone. And finally I just said, you know, Mr. Hodges, like, you know, thank you so much. Could you please calm down and go a little slower? I'm taking notes. You know, I'd like to really understand your position. And then I explained to him, I'm an alum. I have a Bachelor of Science degree. I respect scientific methodology. You know, why are you so adamant about this? And he just claimed that anybody could send them $500 and a bag of dust, and if it include anything to do with petroleum products, you would get a natural date like that, even if it was glue made in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s. Anything with petroleum products could give you a date much, much further back because of the etymology or the bacterial content and whatnot of petroleum products. They date to very ancient parts of the past. So even modern glues would give you that date.
You went there to talk to somebody.
Oh, well, that was for the Travis Project.
Oh.
I went to the University of Arizona and I was removed by police force. And I'm an alumni.
As an alumni who's contributed to the university was escorted off the campus. We've got a long way to go with academia.
They might have thought my camera equipment and tripod was a gun or something, which showed them it was not, but...
So there's Scott Walter, who we're going to try to interview and meet with, and that's the pipe that he has. But again, he said he has over 300 of these artifacts. He is interested in them. And the one program I saw of his where he talked about it, he didn't go into great detail. It was more about the finding of it was the focus of the story, not so much analyzing the artifact. Correct. Inside the pipe was residue of tobacco, and that can be...
Smoking gun.
Right.
Yeah. This can be carbon dated, and this did come back. This dates did go back much further, so it makes us jump back into the enigma.
Right.
And say, oh shit, they're real.
So again, we can't prove these are real. We desperately would love to have experts look at these things, prove that they're not. Fine. And we'll walk away and go on to something else. But if they're real, we could think that these are significant and need more attention, need more professionals to look at them. But again, because of the images on them, nobody wants to touch them. It's a shame. So thank you very much.